Hey guys, this is a Necrotic Wake 16 as a Restoration Druid. I'll try and commentate anything that I think is useful. So let's jump into the video. Nothing too interesting to say on the first few pulls. As you can see here, I go... let's talk about talents actually while this is playing. I went for a very greedy choice on Spiteful week. It actually saved us a bit, and you'll see why later. But normally I would take Entangling Roots here at tier 4. Especially on... that's because it's Spiteful week, so as soon as these mobs die, you can just mass entangle them and then move on to the next pack. Not too much to say for now. One thing I have noticed a lot of healers not doing is sort of pre-hotting the tank going into the next pull. I'm guilty of this myself. I don't always remember to do it, but it's something you should try and do. So I hardcasted a root there. So you can see, I think I tried to get some mana here, but see here, I did not pre-hot the tank. But he's popped a few cooldowns. He's got Avatar and Shield Block going. I think I accidentally pressed Iron Bark, so that was actually not needed since he had a few defensives up. So that Iron Bark was sort of wasted, but let's just carry on. So one thing to look out for on this pack, if your group has have their interrupts on cooldown, you want to be ready to use Typhoon to knock the enemies back. So I'll show you the rest of the pack actually. The Stitched Vanguard as a Restoration Druid you can actually dispel. So let's just carry on. So we get the Kyrian buff. For one thing that's useful to note about this is that the orbs actually deal damage based on proximity. So I think you want to be standing close to enemies when you have it. So yeah, if you see here, I'm trying to stand on top of the enemies, and it's doing a good amount of damage. So I've got these weak auras on my screen that I should make smaller. Okay, let's just carry on. So let's talk about Prideful. So this is a mistake I see a lot of healers make, and sometimes I don't do this properly myself. So as you can see, Prideful is spawning here. In an ideal world, no enemies are alive when Prideful spawns. But while Prideful is spawning, you can't actually attack it. So the most useful thing you can do is pre-hot your party. I might make a video that goes into more detail on healing Pridefuls. So ideally, you throw a rejuve out on everyone. Here I put down an Efflow. So just, spreading rejuves. I'm actually a bit behind in this case. We've got a Spiteful approaching me as well. But the idea is to throw out rejuves as much as you can. Throw out your hots, wild growth, and then you want to flourish. If you're running flourish, you want to flourish when you have a lot of these hots on people. Another common mistake is is people not using astral defensives like Astral Shift or Bark Skin, especially as the Prideful ramps up its stacks. So you can see it's on 20 stacks. This is where it's hitting the hardest. So you sort of want to save your defensives and flourish for that period. Now this is why I took Heart of the Wild. So I'm going to basically just pump on damage and kill this boss as quickly as I can. So hit the Eclipse, use the Convoke offensively. On Fortified, you can just sort of blast this week. The bosses on this week, so there's nothing too interesting. And as you can see, I do contribute a considerate amount of damage. So yeah, that's that. Going into this next pool, something useful you can do is that if your group doesn't CC any of these mages, these Brittlebone mages, they cast the Frostbolt Volley. You really don't want that to go off and hit the group. So I'm basically just chaining Cyclones on it. Now, the way to do this is look at the cast time of your Cyclone. For me, it's around 1.3 seconds. It'll vary depending on your haste. So essentially, when this Cyclone debuff has less than that amount of time remaining on it, you can safely cast it and get the next Cyclone going out. So there was pretty much no healing to do in that pack, just because no volleys went off. So let's just carry on. Yeah, I've got some DR trackers overlapping the interrupts, so that's something I need to move. So something some groups might not know is that this big guy, the skeletal marauder, he casts a shield on him, and if you break it before the shield expires, it deals a large chunk of damage to him, pretty much killing him. So that's something to look out for. This group is actually doing really well in terms of DPS, so there's that. So what I'm looking out for here is that these guys have a cast called Final Harvest, and it basically heals them to like full health or something. Either way, it's a spell that you don't want going off. So I see that no one is sort of interrupting it, so I choose to cyclone this, and as you can see, I barely make it. So the 6 seconds of not being able to attack it is better than having to kill it from full health. So again, I pick up this buff. If I remember correctly, I hopefully walk into melee, just so I can make use of it. Okay, looks like I don't. To the best of my knowledge, there's nothing that cleaves in this pack based on range, so I don't think it would actually hurt for me and the hunter to go into melee range, just so we get the most use out of this buff. Okay, so going into the Prideful, this is what I mean, right? There's nothing useful that I can do in this instance of time except put HOTS on people. So that's something I should have done. I should have put HOTS out on everyone, so I could start. So I could start the boss. So I could start the Prideful with a few HOTS on everyone, and I'm just throwing out rejuves, wild growth, and then just basically spamming regrowth. So what I like to do is I like to use a Swiftman to consume a hot that's almost expired, use it on a wild growth, and then flourish that. So I think I do that here. Yeah, so that was a flourished wild growth, and as you can see, it really pumps through the, it really tops the group up. And during that point, you can damage the Prideful a bit to basically help kill it faster. Another thing to note is that from experience, these Pridefuls tend to last around 40 seconds. So that means at some point you're going to have to put your FLO down. I would try and do that sort of maybe 50-60% of the way through, just because the damage at that point isn't too high. So, yep, skip through that, blasting through these packs. Nothing too interesting to say about these pulls, really. So another Prideful spawned. Again, I didn't pre-hot people. Another good thing to do, if you can, is use your Cenarian Ward and capture that in your Flourish, just because that heal is very, very strong. It's also good to see if people use their defensives. So at this point would be a good time to use Barkskin. I have Barkskin up. The Shaman also has their defensive up, but we can heal through it. I'm fairly geared, so I can sort of get away with that. But if you really want to play this well, then this is what you should do. So once you practice a bit, you can actually heal through Pridefuls without using any cooldowns. So nothing too interesting about that pack. So here we have CCs on both mages, or we've tried to do that. Again, they have the Frostbolt volley that you really don't want that cast to go off. The next dangerous mob in this pack is the crossbowmen. So it's best to CC those as well. So assuming the two mages are CC'd by the group, I'm just going to like spam Cyclone on one of the crossbowmen. As you can see, they cast that shoot spell and it hits quite hard. So there's also a weak aura that shows you who the spell is targeted on. And you can use that to sort of see who's about to take damage. This is a good time to use a defensive like the Shaman did. And yeah, we just kill this guy. So this boss is quite dangerous, so you really want to blast him as fast as you can. If I just go back, I played this fight very greedily, and it actually pays off. So this boss casts an enrage, and that's something you want to soothe as a healer. But I was busy DPSing, so I kind of relied on the hunter to do that. But basically, this is one of the bosses where you want to blast him as fast as you can, so you don't have to deal with dangerous mechanics. And I think on this phase, I just kind of hot everyone. Dodging the breath. Yeah, on fortified week, it's really not too bad, but on the other weeks, it is quite bad. Now, this is actually a mistake by me. I really underestimated the damage at this point, and it sort of caught me off guard, and I wasn't prepared to heal it. So I think I was going to Tranq here, since that hunter dropped low, but that chain harvest really came in big. And you'll see why taking Heart of the Wild really helps. So the damage I did to the boss actually saved us, as you'll see in a second. Sometimes as a group, people just decide to tunnel the boss, which sometimes can work, sometimes it doesn't work. So Final Harvest is about to go off, and the boss is about to die. If Final Harvest goes off with these two alive, it could very likely be a wipe. So that extra bit of damage I did on the boss from taking Heart of the Wild really saved us there. That's also another thing to take note of is worst case scenario, you leave one of the mobs is alive. What you can do is you cyclone them when the Final Harvest cast is about to go off, such that they're cycloned when it finishes. It doesn't kill the mob, it doesn't deal damage to you, but you still have to deal with it afterwards. That's just something to do in case you guys get caught by that. Yeah, the Shaman's Chain Harvest really saved us there. So here I said to the tank, I'm going to taunt the mob that puts a tank debuff out when it reaches 2 or 3 stacks. It's not on this pack, but I'll show you. It's just something useful you can do because it can really hurt. I think each stack of it is 15% extra damage taken. So nothing too interesting about these packs. So these spare parts fixate onto random players, and as you can see, I've got 2 of them fixating on me. When you have aggro, it's always a good idea to, maybe not always, but it's generally a good idea to run towards the tank or the melee, just so they can cleave them down faster, or better yet, get aggro off you. So I think that's what I try and do here. So I put Bark Skin on myself because I think they're going to hit me a few times. Also put Cenarian Ward on myself, just to help with the damage. And that's that. So yeah, so this is the tank debuff. It really, really hurts. So I think I taunted a bit too early. So I think, let's see when I taunted. I taunted here when it had around 5 seconds left. So I should have got further and maybe waited until 3 seconds and then taunted it. Thankfully I have Pod Tender and that keeps me alive. But the tank doesn't have another sack of the debuff to worry about, so that's fine. So I think later on I figure out the timing. So let's just watch this Prideful. And so again, as it spawns, you want rejuves out on everyone. I'm not too worried about my life bloom uptime here because I'm not running photosynthesis, but it's still a useful spell to have out. So basically here you want to ramp up for a big flourish. So get out as many hots as you can. And then you can flourish it. I think here I may have skipped flourish, but if you have a choice, you always want to use flourish and then Tranq and then convoke, in my opinion, because you'll have the Prideful buff for a minute. Flourish is a 1.5 minute cooldown. You'll most likely have flourish back you'll have Flourish back after the Pride debuff wears off, and you can use it for the next dangerous cast. Tranq, I'd say you put Tranq next, just because this spell doesn't really help contribute towards damage. And you want to use Convoke. You want to avoid using Convoke on Prideful if you can, in my opinion, just because the damage buff you gain from it is really, really big. Sorry, you do a lot of damage with Convoke once you have the Prideful buff. So that's quite useful on bosses, especially on tyrannical weeks where you do want things to die as quickly as they can. But this is just some more trash. Not too much to say. Just want to you just want to make sure these cleavers go through the big guy ideally. So this guy deals AoE damage to nearby enemies. We have 2 melee. I tell the tank I'm taunting the next one, so I'm running away. I taunt it, but I think what happened was the shaman had their earth elemental out, and the earth elemental happened to take the aggro at that point. It works out well either way. So just skipping through this, yeah, you want to make sure these guys throw the cleavers on each other where possible. That might not always be possible, and if you have to dodge a cleaver, I think the best thing to do is run further away and then start moving perpendicular to the angle the cleaver is thrown at, just because there's some travel time. So killing these guys. So I think I iron barked the tank a bit earlier just because I knew this would hurt a bit. So as you can see, I go into bear form, I taunt him. He's waiting for the stacks to fall off and he takes it back. So as you can see, in this dungeon I practiced that and got a bit better at it. Actually, here's another thing that I forgot about. So this guy has I think it's a frontal, and you really don't want to get hit by it. So yeah, this gut slice frontal. It hits the tank and 2 melees. So I tried my best. So I actually did not do the optimal thing here. Because I forgot it was a dot. So I was thinking, okay, I'll just wild growth them, nature swiftness, regrowth them. But here, the best course of action would have been to nature swiftness, regrowth this monk, just because he was lower in health. Maybe regrowth the shaman, throw out a wild growth, and swift mend it. So just skipping through this. So this guy deals AoE damage near him. So I try and keep a hot on the melee players essentially. So the final Prideful. At this point, I think I ramped because going into this Prideful, I already had a few rejuves out. But I always try to dot the Prideful early on, just so it dies out a little bit faster. In fact, I think I got a bit greedy here and I let a few too many dots fall off. Well, once you once you deal with Prideful a few times, you sort of get a feel of it and how much damage it does. So even though it looked like people were dropping low, I wasn't actually too worried about them dying. Although, that being said, if they were to get hit by an orb, they would have died. So yeah, here I got very, very greedy and I held my Tranq, so I sort of underestimated the damage of that Prideful. Just decided to combat res the monk, just so we get the most value out of Prideful. So this dot actually does hurt a lot, so you want to throw out hots on the person that has it. This hurts even more in a tyrannical week. So I get the dot on myself. This would be a good time to use Bark Skin actually. Just because there aren't too many other sources of damage going on to me. So here I go into Moonkin form and convoke the boss. You want to one-phase this boss if you can, but if you can't do that, then the next best thing you can do is keep the hook mob alive. And if you look at the timer, Meat Hook is coming in 11 seconds, and the boss is going to escape in 13 seconds. You can actually use this Meat Hook to hit the boss right after the boss escapes. So whoever has the hook should position themselves such that the boss gets hit by that hook, and then the boss gets trapped back down. That'll be more of an issue on a tyrannical week, and if you can do that, that's it. It does save you a lot of time. So not too much to be said. The shaman did bloodlust on it and asked if it was a bit overkill. At this point, we're not going to +2 the key, so it doesn't really matter. This boss is quite long, so I'll just go through the bits that that can be discussed, really. So, Frozen Bind, you can see who it's on. If your group is coordinated, they can already start moving, but I can see it's going on the shaman. So, I'm getting ready to dispel the shaman, and as soon as I see these guys walk out of it, I'm dispelling the shaman. Cool. I actually forgot about this next spell, but here we've got Icebound Aegis coming in. This is a spell you want to ramp up for, because as long as the shield is up, the party takes increasing damage from it, which you'll see in a second. So I forgot about this spell. So in an ideal world, I would have had rejuves out on everyone before that. Again, you just want to dispel when you can. This shield spell actually is probably the most damaging spell on this boss, so if you need to use a cooldown on it, then don't be afraid to do so, especially on Tyrannical Week where the shield will be up for longer. Aside from that, there's not actually too much more to discuss here. Just make sure you dodge all these. So the hunter disengaged when the monk landed. Oh, actually, I'll talk about this mechanic in case you're not aware with it. So the person that gets exiled, when they come back, they have this debuff. When the debuff expires, it leaves one of these patches. So ideally, you want to drop it in a corner just to give your group the most room. So this hunter gets it, the monk is here, and the disengage actually breaks the root. So the monk gets hit by the root. So I just dispel the monk right afterwards. Other than that, it's pretty much rinse and repeat. You just want to make sure you're ramping for the shields. So just have rejuves out on everyone during that, and then throw out a wild growth as and when the damage comes. And yeah, that's pretty much the key.